What's good with the YouTube? Y'all know Big Flocka with a convict's perspective, and I'm gonna smash, dash, and slide on through with a whole lot of energy because it's about time that I come with a banger, man. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, and do all those things to help support this channel, and hit that bell notification for future fire content. And what we're gonna be breaking down today, man, is gonna be interesting, man. So, what I'm gonna plan on doing is Sunday's a little bit different, slower day for us, man. So I'm gonna do every Sunday. I'm gonna do probably an educational topic. Like I'm gonna go through each bond over the next 14 weeks. I'm gonna do the introduction today, introduction to what bonds are. Then I'm gonna break down each bond every week and give you guys a little bit of a base understanding of it, right? So here we go. Let's start this off like this, man. So the bonds, okay. What people don't realize, man, the bonds, okay, were created sometime around 79 to 81 was around the time when the bonds were first started to be drafted and were utilized out there on those líneas. Like I said before, there was the XIV structure Nortenos that it came out at one time, which was XIV symbolized the 14 bonds, which organized them to become structure. And Nortenos, because they were from Northern California, as the Soldados were having their push. And so they went through different changes and mandates, and they drafted a lot of this stuff came from some of the a lot more educational requirements that NF members had at that time. They brought it from that forth to create the bonds. So there were similarities in this, but they made it a little bit more simplified, a little bit less. Whereas the Constitution has a lot of political obligations, this was a little bit more not as complex as far as in the filing of charges and articles and whatnot. It was more simple, direct, but yet professional. Okay. Now we know some of the ones that drafted these bonds: Gopas, Brown Bob, you know, Bobo had a big part in this as well. You know what I'm saying? Fucking as well as Corny. Corny is known as a Nuestra Raza forefather, and a lot of that was he was in line with the NR movement. That's why he always had a key part later on, as far as to the dismantling of the NR and the creation of the Soldados. Forever, he's always been the top echelon, you know what I'm saying, member associated with the NR, even though he was a Familiano. So the bonds started to come out more around 82, and there was no set implementation of any movements. Now, there were several times that we're going to start movements. One was the Raza Unida, which was so that they could recruit from both sides. You know what I'm saying? You had the structure of Nortenos. Then the Nuestra Raza started coming out sometime in the 80s. And the mandates, the birthday was given January 22nd, 1984, because that was around the time that they felt that this movement was created. Because after the civil war that occurred between the NF, a lot of them went from San Quentin to different locations, DVI to Folsom, right there, which was a shoe at that time. And that's where everything was drafted and finally imposed. Okay, and that's where everything took place. As we know, the bonds have changed over the years as far as certain words, but the concept remains the same. They've never changed in their concepts. Just certain words maybe have changed. Like, for instance, all hermanos will strive for better education. All bros will strive for better education. All en soldados, all souls. All this is just a minor alteration. And what people don't realize too, right? There was a while where there'd be certain words that were changed with the bonds, so then therefore you could tell what schooling tree you were from. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't talk about that. Now we know about the dismounting 97 and, allowing those that were previously known as Norteños, now known as Northerners, being given the same educational, rights and treatment, because now they were responsible to uphold the Norteño laws as a Northerner. You weren't obligated and committed to the struggle, but you were there. If you wanted to function as a household member, you had to comply and conform to all expectations. See, the bonds are really, important, man. They are the guidance in absence of a carnal being there. Okay, when there's not a carnal, which is recognized as the true authority on any facility, in any facility that's considered an established regiment, you have to have a regiment commander. Now, the RC position can really technically only be held by a carnal. And there's certain procedures that have to be imposed, like to file for, to impose certain articles of the Constitution to become an interim RC and all that. Technically the GOP is supposed to declare who the RC is of each facility. But the regiment just isn't a regiment just because the homeboys have a foothold there. There has to be a carnal. Okay. Now, this is what's been given to them because see, all choices and decisions, right, that are made on one's career are supposed to be processed, reviewed, and stamped by a higher authority, which would be a canal or you know what I'm saying, someone up in the bay at times. Um, Therefore, in the absence of a C being there, you may be on that yard and have to make a decision, right? And that decision has to come from these bonds, and that's why they're written in a simplified way to where there's no gray area. They're black and white. This is what's expected, and this is what you do. Now, if it has to do within procedure at a set facility, there's about 20 different ways you can apply something that is all in accordance to what a bond is. You know what I'm saying? Like for instance, safety and security of a household, keep tabs of all that, right? You may have the homeboys wake up at 5:30. You may decide the homeboys wake up at 5:50. You know what I'm saying? As long as everybody's on their P's and Q's and they're up by the time that bar luck, fully awake and alert, it doesn't matter what time. So that's what I'm using that as an example for is that there's no way to sit there and try to take these bonds and flip them because that's a violation of bond number 14. You know what I'm saying? Anytime you misuse or misrepresent any of the bonds, that's a charge right there that gets you whacked. You know what I'm saying? The bonds are all written in a sequence for a reason. Like I said, they are your authority in the absence of no C being present. Therefore, you will have to make a decision based upon what your teachings teach you and what your bonds say and what from what you know. And there's a lot of other case factors that come into terms like, how long have they been incarcerated? Did they know better? Are they educated? Do they have any type of special needs? These are all things you have to sit there and evaluate before making a decision. Now, never do you make a decision based upon an issue that they had in the past. Once that issue's been resolved, it's supposed to be left behind. Okay. Now, these bonds are also for your due process, and what I mean by due process, right? They protect you. They ensure that you know what you stand for, what you represent, and that nobody can come in and bully you. The law is always your ultimate authority. Um, in the absence of any not being there. So I used to school people, right? I used to tell them like, look, you know, being in an authority position does not mean you're making choices based upon how you feel. You put a person in a position of authority because they're competent and capable and can make a sound decision that is deemed by higher authorities as fair and just. Because you're going to have to answer for that call, that decision. I never had any decisions that I ever made, never were ever questioned. I kicked off the thing with the wolf packs, nobody questioned it. I had a couple removals that I had to sanction. They were all where I exhausted all remedy, you know what I'm saying? And they had to have done a cowardice act in order for me to make that decision to have them hit. Now, there's a lot of dudes I also cleared, right? Because of this factor. Let me see. Chino from Sanjo, Victor Velasquez. I stripped him of his Soldado status and put him on frontline status and gave him a strict discipline. Why? Because he was pulled before he was schooled. So he was given this status without knowing what he represented and how it applied. Therefore, he made a bad decision in accordance to that, man. He could have got hit. And see, I would rather salvage a career than have someone removed. You know what I'm saying? I think people who sit there and put their necks out to save someone are always going to have more respect from their peers than someone who just makes a decision to have somebody hit. And see, everything has to be in accordance to the safety of the household. Now these bonds also apply to you as a household member, to where leadership can abuse you. You can't become a victim. You can't be pressed around because you know your rights. In order to before you can protect your hand, you have to know how to protect yourself. And if you have a clear understanding and concept of these bonds and whatnot, you can never go wrong because you're going to know how to apply them. Even if you get into a little political fucking dispute, you can hit them with this and that. I've had that many times where people were jealous because I was from a different area and they wanted to try to take the fucking reins, and I shut them down. You know what I'm saying? And there was nothing that they could sit there and try to rebuke. You know what I'm saying? Rebuttal. I'm not rebuke. It's too early in the morning. So this is what the bonds are going to be about. That's why we're going to be discussing it, man. And you're going to see how, the main issue that I seen in the late 90s and 2000, right, was that people were being given these bonds without being educated to them. I had a homeboy youngster come in one time, right, who was starting to become a detriment on our functions, right? So I had to pull him to the side in front of another homeboy. And he's like, well, I'm not going to feel inferior. That's what the bond says, bond number 5. I said, what does bond 4 say? It says no internal confrontation, no individualism, no favoritism, no set trip, and none of this. I said, based upon the fact that you're coming in trying to raise a very moot issue that has no fucking merit, you're causing internal conflict right here. Based upon the fact of how you feel, you are showing individualism. Like, well, individualism ain't about you having fucking 10 soups and we having 0. It's about fucking you thinking about yourself when it comes to the household functions. Okay? And what does the beginning of bond number 5 says? It says all ends will acknowledge and respect the authority in charge. So unless you have a bylaw infraction within any of these bonds, you acknowledge and respect the authority in charge, because those that hold leadership position, they are applying the law as they know it, and they're competent and capable to fulfill it. You know? And that's one thing that I had to go at people over and over again, man. You know, there was a time where people were implementing policies, man, that were just, some higher authorities were just getting their C status in other locations, and they had barely even been in models. They just ended up in the right place, and they tried to impose certain things, and I'm like, this isn't even right, you know. But like I said, man, I'm gonna go through bond 1 next week every Sunday. This is to give you guys a clear understanding, of why the Nortenos functions as they do, what due process is, and how it's supposed to apply. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to the educational endeavors and indoctrination of these phases and whatnot, that was one of my fortes when I was behind the wall. Was either running a prison or being a maestro, sponsoring and pulling people. Because I could break things down in a simplified term, but also I had an enriched vocabulary, and I used to be able to motivate the people to understand what I was trying to teach them. I took a very hands-on approach. Even when I was running some facilities and stuff, right? I used to sit there and take time and still jump in on the lecture sessions with like the Norteners or whatnot, or the other Soldados that just got pulled. When I was in corporate shoe, I was the master there. Before that, for all the Norteners and Nortenos. And I would be working with all different segments and phases. And I used to, set an example by, I'd have 10 or 12 people I'm working with, and I'd have a fucking 10 different essays that were being given to me. I let them read each other's, right? And I would fucking double up anything that they put out there, just to show them that the effort needed to be put in. See, being a Soldado took sacrifice. It was never supposed to be easy. I mean, there's times where we're up till 3, 4 in the morning fucking mini write. There's times where I don't have time to even sit there and write family at home. There's times where this is what you want to be. This is what it's about. Either you're a true believer or you're not. And there was a lot of good dudes, man, that were believers. It's unfortunate that most people's setbacks doesn't always occur in there. It comes from when they get out to the streets, man. And some have the carryover back into prison, man. But the bonds, man, this is if you want to know about the functions, the true essence of how Nortenos function, stay tuned for this, man. I'm gonna be going into this deep. Bond 1's gonna be next week. This is just an introduction to what's to come, and then I'm gonna go into other things, man. How to establish a yard, different things about how we used to apply it, man. I'm thinking every Sunday would be good to do a educational session, man. You know what I'm saying? And I think that there's going to be a lot of people that from way back in the days that are going to be listening. They're going to be jumping in with their own experience. You know what I'm saying? Now, each person has a different, at times we'll have difference of opinions. When it comes to the bonds, there is no difference of opinion. There's only one. It's black and white. It is what it is. With that said, your boy Flacco, I'm gone.